All right, here we go.
Here we go. Number five, six.
This is number six. Yeah,
What day of
yeah.
the week is it?
So it is 11 dog. What is the
11 dog.
yeah? What's the Mayan term for 11? It's Buluc.
That's right. I have it here too. I have it here too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
11.
Buluc C or Buluc Oc.
Oh, yeah. I have it here. It just says okay. It looks like
Okay.
okay on there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
11
And, and that's one of my favorite things again about the the Mayan language is that they base their language off of the sounds of the universe, right?
Mm-hmm. Like you were talking
So
about the purr
the purr,
for
for the
jaguar
jaguar, yeah, and then
and the hiss.
the hiss, the zzz for the bee. You know, I spoke
Mm-hmm.
about that. Where's oak? Like, where do you think that is?
Uh, oak. Oak.
Now say it like a dog.
Oak. 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 Oak.
It's a bark. That's
Like
all
a
it is.
park. Yeah.
Yeah,
So wait. Oak is the dog. Oh, okay.
it's
I
the
thought
dog.
Oak was 11. Like how would we call 11?
Oh no
Okay, got
no.
it. I mean,
Yeah yeah.
yep. No. Now I'm on the same page now. I was in
Good good.
somewhere else. I was somewhere else. But yeah, it says 11. Okay for where I am. But yeah,
Mm,
11 Oak
mm.
the dog. Yeah.
Yeah yeah. Yeah yeah.
Oak. 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 Yeah. No, that's great. And then it just makes sense too. It's like, come on. Like, why do we make it more difficult than let's use the sounds that are already there to create our language?
Exactly.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about a bee, so I'm going to go bzz, 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 you know, so you know what I'm talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
that's probably how the foundations of language began. Like for all languages, wherever they erupted, or however they were translated or passed on, because it just makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
We still have some words in English that kind of follow that. There's also a word for that too, when a word sounds like what it is.
Yeah.
Language arts, baby. I
Was
love
that an
it.
onomatopoeia?
Onomatopoeia is, well, yeah, that's literally like the word is the sound. So like bam
Mm-hmm.
or boom.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I guess maybe that is an onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia, what a big word for such a fundamental part of language.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you want it to tell you what it means just by saying it. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So we got,
I
yeah,
think it's pretty funny that the same action, like the same observed action in the universe, is different in every language. Like,
right.
like you can see a boom, and on the western end of the world, it's a kaboom, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you look at Japanese anime, and they when they write it out, it's bakum or something like that.
Raccoon. Yes.
Yeah,
Mm.
it's the same
Yeah, that's
thing.
funny.
It's the exact same
Yeah,
thing.
I know. Yeah, all of our ears and all of our instruments that we use to sense our world are tuned just slightly differently, and of course that carries over and becomes a part of culture.
Hmm.
Because yeah, like there's I remember when I was in Spanish class, like learning what their noises were for different animals. And I don't remember exactly which animals I remember hearing. I'm like, but that's not what it sounds. You know, going, that's not what it sounds like. But you know,
Hmm.
no. Like now, I can look in hindsight and go, yeah, like sure. And you know, different types of animals make different sounds. Not all dogs have the same bark.
Not even.
Um, so
Some have a yip,
uh,
some have a bark, and some have a boof.
yeah. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Yeah, yeah. The bigger it gets, the
Yeah.
just ugh. Yeah,
Yeah.
the more booming it is. It's
Yes.
nutty. And then
In
so
terms of
on that,
dogs, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So on that same thought, the other side of that is Tzi, Tzi, Tzi. That's what the Yucatec call dog. The same symbol. Which I was thinking about that, and it's like, where does Tzi come in, right? For a dog. Well,
Doesn't
if you,
sound necessarily like a dog bark. Yeah.
but it is the sound that a dog makes. Because if you look at, the jaguar, we discussed this last time, how you've got the purr and the hiss. So it's like joy, general communication, and danger, right? So, more negative communication, if you will. So, you've got the bark, which can be a signal of danger. So is the growl,
Mm-hmm.
which could be the
Oh, yeah.
right. And then I was thinking, what the dog whisperer does. It just like came to my head. He does this little,
Yeah.
yeah. It's the exact same thing, and he's they
Yeah.
calm down instantly.
Huh.
Like, which could be
So,
the start of the growl, like,
oh, the start of the growl. Okay,
right?
great. Yeah. Yeah, and it's kind of like it's similar to the cat in the sense that it's kind of like a hiss, but like it's the very yeah, like you're saying, it's the version that the dog makes, but yeah, just the start of it is enough to tell the dog, hey, don't do that, or like
Mm-hmm.
we're cut that out. Yeah, that's really where the power of the sound comes from. Um, and but as you were making that growl sound, which is a very good growl sound, by the way,
Thanks.
uh, it sounded also kind of like a cat purr.
Yeah,
You know,
right, because it's got that
yeah,
vibratory guttural
kind of
sound.
curly, which is interesting too, because there are parallels and kind of inversions between cats and dogs.
Yeah.
They're both mammals, but they behave very differently. Uh,
Sometimes in very opposing ways. Like,
right.
you see a dog's tail wag, most of the time that means it's pretty happy, excited to see you or whatever. You see a cat's tail wagging, that means it's irritated and pissed off, and you don't want to mess with it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah,
How about that?
yeah, yeah. When it's up in the air and kind of doing that little rattlesnake
Oh,
thing,
sure.
that's when cats are excited.
Huh. And you don't see that very often.
Right, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Not much excites a cat, I guess. Although, yeah, like you had mentioned before, I don't know if this was in a previous podcast or not, but that cats can see kind of like see the spirit world, or where was I picking that up? That they can
Yeah.
kind of see they can peer into, they'll be like looking at something, and there's nothing there, but like
Mm-hmm.
they're like, they're tuned into things that we can't necessarily pick up, or just like all species have their instruments are tuned, in extraordinarily different ways, even though it's the same. They're using eyes, they're using ears, but they can perceive things that we have no chance of perceiving just because of the way their instrument is built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dogs often do the same thing. They often will bark at stuff that's like not there,
Right.
but they're observing something. And it's not necessarily because they're hearing something outside. Like, they could be
Yeah.
barking at something in the room that you're not perceiving.
Well, we had a family dog that we inherited from my grandmother that liked to bark at rocks. I don't know what was going on there. That was a very real physical thing, but maybe there was something going on with the rocks, or something that instinctually that they had picked up, where there was some sort of affinity with rocks. Like the dog would drag rocks out of the pond and then bark at them. So just some fun stuff. You know,
Huh.
fun behaviors that would defy explanation. But I'm sure if you really wanted to dig, you could come up with some theories.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm sure dogs also bark at stuff that appears not to be there, but is um, actually things.
So on that topic, have you ever seen that video where a kid is like, or some young guy is working on facial recognition software, and it's just pointed at his face. It's kind of got that yellow box where it's kind of assessing what his face
Yep.
is and where it's at, and it's reading emotion. So he's like going through the different facial expressions, and it's identifying. It says like age 25, angry, sad, happy, and all this. And then like his door opens up in the background, and just kind of ajar, just enough for a body to fit through, and you don't particularly see something. Like there kind of is like this little movement of energy. So if you can pick that stuff up, you
You
do.
see it.
I did, but then the AI program zoomed in on it, picked it out, put a box around where a face would be, and it said, "Woman, 500 years plus, angry." Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah,
That's freaky.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's definite merit to the spiritual world, so much so that even our modern technology is able to perceive it better than we can.
Totally. I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be really freaky, especially since we're entering an age where it's like, oh, AI fakes and stuff like that, but it's going to become so pervasive, and if our technology continues to get more um, more fine-tuned, be able to pick up broader and broader. I mean, the inevitable truth is that we're going to be picking up things that our senses, you know, again, at least for most people, like our five senses aren't used to or aren't trained to pick up, or just simply can't see. I mean, even with like infrared technology and like night vision goggles, it's like we already have technologies that allow us to see things that we wouldn't otherwise be able to see, and it's not like we can confidently say, well, just you're wearing night vision goggles. It's like, well, just because the night vision goggles say that it's there doesn't mean that it's there. Like where we can be that dense, where it's like I can see we're heading towards a future where people are going to be so easily dismiss everything as fake. But also like with proper justification too, because it's like unless it's happening to you in your face, you don't know what's real and what's not. If you see it on a screen, like you have take it with a grain of salt, take it with the whole shaker, because you're never going to know what's real coming through a screen. Only if you're really experiencing it in your face. And that's why I think even there is going to be like, people are going to be playing with technology and they're going to see things that are going to freak them out. And they're going to be like, they're going to think that their technology is broken or something. And I don't know, those kinds of things are going to happen more and more and more. As well as just the presence of different, like it's going to have to become more prevalent, just by nature of how technology evolves, how time evolves experience that we all end up having. So
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up perception and night vision goggles. Have you heard about the early versions of night vision goggles?
no.
So apparently, and I don't know how true this is, but the story keeps cropping up in different sections of the internet that the early versions of night vision goggles were in a different spectrum because they were using a very certain type of fluid to create the lens. And apparently they were field testing it in Vietnam. And it was supposedly, very top secret operation, which would make sense because it's giving you a clear advantage over the your enemy. You wouldn't want to get that information to the wrong person. But they were field testing it, evidently, and they were receiving a lot of wild fire, sometimes friendly fire from guys in helicopters on, on mounted guns and with their rifles in hand, and they couldn't understand what was going on or why they were doing this. But the soldiers wearing the goggles were freaking out because they were seeing things that we don't normally perceive in our reality.
Of course. Whoa.
And evidently it was like full-bodied entities that they were observing. And as the story goes, one of the higher-ranking officers in charge of that particular mission, who was instructed not to put the goggles on, mind you, took one of his privates, I think, goggles, put them on for a brief moment, saw what they were seeing, which was quite literally demonic, at the very least extra-dimensional. And these things were flying about, taunting the guys wearing the goggles that were suddenly able to perceive them. And these guys were shooting at them, which was causing the crossfire and friendly fire and wild shots that didn't seem
because they're just shooting at what looks like nothing to everybody else,
Exactly. And so he saw that, took them off, ordered everybody to take them off, and complete their current mission without using those things. And apparently, he got some sort of, commendation because, despite the fact that he disobeyed a direct order, like, he probably saved a bunch of lives and, was successful because he decided to make that call.
Yeah, but he let those demons get away.
I mean, are you really doing anything to them? Like using
not. You're actually
weapons?
giving them as even great media will show, whenever there's demons, if you fire violence into them, that only gives them energy. That only makes them more powerful.
Yeah.
It's like they need a big hug or something. Or a cross. I think crucifixes seem to do somehow, faith seems to be a powerful repellent. One would hope.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting story.
Yeah. It's very bizarre. Like, and apparently
it makes sense. Like with any technology, that probably happens with every technology. It's also like you have to measure the advantage of having night vision goggles with the unknown disadvantages that may come about because of it. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, apparently the, like, you're saying that technology, a lot of it kind of started as a result of one thing and became another, or had unseen effects. Apparently the development of the television was supposed to be some way to contact spirits from the other side.
Like originally, like the original television was not.
Yeah, they weren't trying to transmit images. They were trying to receive information and talk to other beings. And then slowly but surely they realized, like, oh, we could transmit images on here. Like, I could show a picture. Look at that. Wow, holy crap. Oh, look.
Whoa.
Well, we could show moving pictures on this. And
It's
then the
also Poltergeist. You know, like the movie Poltergeist, right? It's like
right.
through a TV, right, where ghosts are. So that's probably always been a part. I mean, and
It's same
the
with the movie White
original.
Noise too.
Oh yeah, is it?
Hmm.
That's also a yeah.
Yeah,
I
same
mean,
thing.
the first movie presented ever was terrifying to those who witnessed it because they thought an actual train was barreling towards them, and why wouldn't they? You
Yeah,
know, like, I mean, it's easy in hindsight to say, well, like, they knew they knew what was going on. Like no, but like the first time seeing a movie and a
mm,
screen, there is no such thing as fake news. You're gonna run for your life because the chance that it's not real, that you're is so much smaller than anything you've ever experienced before.
yeah,
Or even the chance that it's not real being so much high, even if there's just the smallest chance that it is real, why take that chance and risk dying?
hmm,
Because you didn't get out of the way of the train that was headed right for you.
right. Yeah,
And so the
uh,
same kind of thing, I guess, with like the TV too. It's like anytime we develop a technology, it's going to reveal to us things that we didn't know were there before.
hmm,
Um, yeah, or didn't know were possible before. It's like, oh, I can stand in the way of a oncoming train as long as it's on a screen and it's not a real train that's, you know, has matter and weight. If it's
hmm.
just light particles, I can withstand a train that hits me that's just light.
Right. Yeah, yeah. That's funny. I actually was watching Mind Unveiled again, and they were talking about the you know the silver screen and how a lot of different theaters, you know, cinemas were originally known as ISIS theaters. Like it was a really long spiel with a lot of deeper connections because apparently what is it the obscura, what's it called, the ability to project imagery has
Right,
existed for quite a long time.
right.
So,
Like shadow puppets and stuff. Like you can put something
sure.
right. You shoot light or you focus light against a small object, and then it casts a shadow against a against a large background or something.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so, like, if you do that through a pane of glass, you can have in images invert, and you'd be able to copy them down. Now, you could also
Mm.
do that like with slides, right? If you're able, how to
Hmm.
do that, you can start doing it with slides. If you've got a powerful enough light source, you can make it really vibrant and bright, projected against a wall. And so you could provide entertainment or information to people without actually having to write it down on something, you know, that other people could just snatch up and see easily.
Right.
So, like, the idea was that, you know, the rich or the enlightened or those who were very secretive, like fraternities or military personnel, like you could have this sort of imagery happen in a more obscure way, in a secretive way, and then it eventually became so much more refined because of the development of film that you're able to
Right.
actually produce it in mass and for entertainment.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense that would all technologies are kind of born for the elite first, for whatever purposes, whether that's for more power or just for their own gain or whatever. Uh, um, I don't know where I was going with that one.
Yeah, um, it's very very bizarre. Uh, the whole idea. It's like they went into so many different things in the video. Um, secret societies and alchemy and
I was
yeah,
just thinking about how Mission Impossible, it's like, this message will self-destruct because you were mentioning how, like it was the use case for early on was like, here's a quick way to give you information. Like, if you have to write it down, and then you have to reproduce copies. Also, like, it was making me think, like, if you write things down and it's in words, there's maybe there can be more room for interpretation and therefore disambiguation, or like
mm-hmm.
people interpreting it however they understand those words. And kind of like we were talking about at the beginning, Oc, and the ways
Right.
that different people hear sounds,
Mm-hmm.
but also how they interpret meaning from those words and from those sounds. But if you have a visual medium that shows what is happening, it just introduces like a whole new dimension, right? Like, you're not reading with your eyes and then making the pictures in your head. You're seeing the pictures, so there's less room for interpretation of what we're talking about, or
Mm-hmm.
what the example is being given, or what we're learning through the visual medium.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
or even through oral tradition. Like I know somebody who was like a very avid reader, but had never heard the word or the concept said aloud in the same context of knowing what that word, how that word is spelled. So
mm,
they were talking about an archipelago, right, a chain of
mm-hmm.
islands, but they said archipelago
Oh,
because
of
they,
course,
right, yeah, because how do you know how to pronounce that without
right.
having like a very distinct understanding of you know Latin pronunciation like they show in the dictionary,
But
or
even
having
but
it
even
said to you.
still, But even still, like, tomato, tomato, it happens all the time, right? Like, so,
Hmm.
you could be taught by somebody, you could hear the word even out loud, and somebody pronounces it differently, and you have no reason to say the word, and maybe you read it a couple of times, but the first time that you have to say it out loud, you're going to say it differently. Or the first time that you're quietly observing, like dogs do, um, you hear somebody else say it, and you go, "Oh, ooh, okay." You kind of like, you probably subconsciously, or whether you're aware of it or not, you kind of go, "Oh yeah, that word again." Um, oh, that's how you say it.
Hmm.
Or, you know, you may not say that word. You may go out of your way not to say that word just in case you're wrong, or they're wrong, and now you don't know, and so you could second guess yourself into silence.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I also heard something earlier. Maybe it might have been yesterday, where a dude was talking about how law, language, and like contracts and stuff is the same words that we use in our common parlance, but they never mean the exact same thing as the way we say them in our in our common speech. So like voluntary and may are different interpretations in
Hmm.
contracts, right, than they are in reality. That's why they're so confusing. So like you can use the written word to also manipulate people, you know,
I mean,
and trap
uh,
them without them realizing because they speak differently than what's actually being written or
I think
interpreted.
that's another reason why it's kind of an interesting phase that we're in right now with technologies, because we've had film for long enough now where you can present something visually, and it's harder to misinterpret what you're seeing than it is to like hear words, or like read a story or read a book and go, oh, I kind of have an. That's why people say, oh, I like the book more than the movie, because they got to make the movie in their head of the words that they were reading, versus watching the movie and they're like, well, this is somebody else's interpretation, and yeah, it had some good elements, but it wasn't as epic and it wasn't as detailed as what I was able to read and create in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one reason I do like books to a certain degree more than movies is because you get the internal machinations and thought processes of a person's perspective a lot easier than you can in a visual medium.
Hmm.
Like when you do that, like you have to do a voiceover, and sometimes like you have to sit there and draw out that moment way longer than it should be while you're sitting here listening to this person's thoughts before they can actually act. And sometimes that is just
Whoa.
that's really difficult to do and make interesting for an actor and a director, videographer,
Yeah.
to make that appealing for a person to just sit there and observe
This
and
is
keep their attention. You know.
so terrible because what we're describing now sounds exactly like what I'm endeavoring to do. Like I want, well, because we're talking about a bunch of different things, but ultimately it comes down to like language as an art, right? And I want to put one of my other content ideas is to like focus on a single word. Like one of the words that I'm probably going to start with is like inspiration or mistake, and just like do a 10-minute deep dive on that word. So let's say it's inspiration, and go uh, and because just like you're saying with law and stuff, it's like it's up to interpretation, and that's how lawyers kind of get this skeevy, kind of grimy, like do we need lawyers because we need people to interpret it, or because lawyers in a sense are like investigating, right? Like where was the original intention? And it's not so much the words as they're written, but it's like what's the energy we're getting from this person? Because you need to convince a jury probably whether or not someone's guilty or not. So it's like that's why we look for evidence, because the evidence is uh, if it's evidence, if it's hard evidence, it's not up for interpretation. This is what was.
Mm-hmm.
These are some of the facts. These are the facts as we know them.
Right.
And then it's the lawyer's job to kind of like feng shui the facts to make it look a certain way, right? Like to make it to tell a particular story. So the lawyer's job is to devise a story or an interpretation, and language being the art. It's like so anyway, content wise, I'm like, how do I make that interesting? How do I make that fun for people? Because people probably think litigation is very boring, or they think of when they think of a lawyer, they think of what we've seen in courtroom dramas. But like most of being a lawyer is like looking through documents and evidence and stuff that's not in the courtroom. A lot of lawyers don't even go into a courtroom for their daily work, and even the ones that do are in the courtroom much less of the time of what they're doing on a daily basis. Um, but ultimately, like, how do you make learning fun? But also, like, I think part of it is like this recognition that language arts, like, you go to a language arts class. You don't go. I mean, you might also go to an English class. Like depending on what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the language is that you're learning. But fundamentally, like the understanding, like before you even get started with the class and start learning words or reading books or whatever, it's like, let's talk about how language is an art form and how the words that I'm saying right now are going to be heard different by depending on the ears that are taking them in and the context of the being that is receiving them. Uh, and so it's fun. It's a game. Like, so
Yeah.
ultimately it's a game that we're playing, and 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 that's the way that you make it fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're playing with words. Language is an art form, and therefore you are a creative. You're a creative just by speaking. You're putting together words and tones that have never been heard before with every word that you say, every thought that you think. You're processing it and deciding whether or not and how to organize the words as they come out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with every moment. And what could be more fun? And so, like with inspiration, for example, it's like we think of inspiration as having to be some sort of big feat that we're astounded by, and it makes us go, oh, I had no idea we were capable of that. When really inspiration also means simply to breathe in. Like we can be inspired, like to inspire is to take in spirit, to take in air. So to inspire, you're inspired with every breath you take, and it can be that small. So ultimately, I want to like, how do I set this up? How do I communicate this using the technologies that we have into content that is entertaining, that kind of like draws you in? We don't realize that you're learning, but you're excited by the prospect of like, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize that that's the whole goal, I think, is I want to be this kind of like benevolent trickster. Like I want to trick you into realizing that you want to learn. That like learning is like the only thing that is the most fun thing to do, because it's a never-ending game. It's a never-ending game that you can continue to play. Yeah.
I mean, look at Shakespeare, man. This body of work has existed for over 400 years, and the amount of interpretations that you can create, the worlds that you can develop off of the exact same words, just slight twist here and there in the context of the situation that you've put it in, can just vastly change the reality of the show.
Yeah.
But it still convey the same human expression, like emotion and
That's making me think. It's like, I mean, no matter how you tell it, every time McBee is going to be the bad guy. Some things aren't left to interpretation. I suppose too, to a certain extent. And maybe that's where there's really some curiosity, is like, what are the fundamental truths or laws of the universe?
Right.
Man, we started with dog, and we were on it, and we've touched back a little bit. I feel like we should get back into, or reconnect it back to the day that we are at, and yeah.
So in that light, today is also the flower, right? It's number
Right.
11. But in the step of the growth of the seed, right, it is the flowering point. So this is the point, literally, where things start to split apart from a bud, right? And it's seemingly dissonant structures, right? You think it's all vibrating as one whole, but then it splits, boom, disbursement. And it seems very chaotic to a certain degree, right? Because you're just sitting there, you're looking at all these petals, and it's like, wow, how does it form like that? It just is. This is just. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's just so chaotic. There's so much happening.
It's
But
different color than the rest of the plant.
but it's
Got
all in
all
an
kinds of
ordered.
different stuff on it.
Yeah, but it's all in an ordered pattern, right?
Right.
You can sit there and count the petals in each layer, and it'll form a Fibonacci frequency, a Fibonacci style code, so that it leads to, as it approaches perfection, what is known as the phi ratio, right? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, well, that's the Fibonacci thing, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As you sit there and rotate between each number and divide, the previous number by the latter number, the former number by the latter, you develop closer and closer to the golden ratio, right?
Gotcha.
And that's the whole point of the structure of Fibonacci, is to reach that perfect ratio, and that's what nature does. It can't just start out in the perfect ratio. It has to start from a basic building block and develop from there. So the fact that we're just hitting all these seemingly random topics, even though each thought was chained and followed by the last, or following the last one, is exactly part of that ordered chaos.
Totally. Well, yeah. Yeah, and kind of to what you were saying about the flower too, it's like the flower looks different than every other part of the plant. Like
Mm-hmm.
it has a different color. But I was also noticing how the bud, as it turns into a flower, like the bud is like a seed that grows on the plant,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of like an extension of its origins, like from
Mm-hmm.
being a seed. When you see a bud, so day nine,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that potential again. And day nine is known to be kind of like where you're. It's at that 70% mark, and it's where the my Mayan sign talks about it as being like when marathon runners are like 70% through. They're like, that's the hardest part. It's like make or break moment
Mm-hmm.
for if you're going to complete the marathon or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's another seed moment, right? Where it's like the seed is like in the ground in the dark, and it's like, well, are we going to do this thing or not? And
Mm-hmm.
then by the time you're a bud, it's like, yeah, you're going to do like again, like you're 70% there. It's like you can't stop at nine. You just can't. Like what does it mean? What has to happen for you to have gone through all this growth, popped out of the ground, come all this way? So you got to become a flower. Like
Mm-hmm.
all the parts are there. Yeah, unless the tree gets cut down, like what's to stop it from becoming a flower?
Well, so funny enough, there are plants that do stop at buds, right?
Mm,
I mean, we don't necessarily think about it that way, but they're very prevalent in our society, especially in modern times. You've got
yeah.
two plants in particular that are very good at making buds, and they're, actually cousins, they're related to each other. And then we use them to differing degrees to alter our state of consciousness and our experience, right? One of them, pretty obvious, is cannabis, right?
Huh.
The
That's not the flower that we use. It's
It's
the bud. That's
called
why it's
the
called bud.
flower, but it is a bud. It's exactly what it
Huh.
is. It never actually blooms into anything. It creates this bud,
Whoa.
and it's got a pistil, right, which is the little white hair that turns orange typically,
Mm,
but it never actually opens up into a flower. It stays
mm,
there and engorges and it fills with resin, and that's the thing that we smoke. I mean, you have to process it, of course, but that's what we ingest is the bud. You
mm.
don't smoke the sticks, you don't smoke the seeds, you don't smoke. You
Right.
can smoke some of the leaves, but it's not going to be nearly as good or as potent as the bud.
Huh.
Now, the other plant that we do use is hops.
I was gonna guess hops. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
the two plants are cousins. So I mean, like you, I'm not going to get into the botany of the
Interesting.
whole situation, but we use those hops to create beer, alcohol, right?
Whoa.
And so like the more buds we throw in there, the more potent it tends to get, and the more alcohol we
I
produce, and the drunker we
wonder.
get.
Yeah, I wonder what the connection is there. Like why these budding plants, why they are also like the most common ones are also the ones that, have inebriating effects on the body. Why why would that be? Like why
So
would yeah.
my thought is that it's because it's the number nine. It's a very powerful, potent stage in existence, right?
Hmm.
That's like you said in a runner's experience. That's the 70% mark, and that's usually when
Make or
stuff
break.
is starting to change in the head, right? Your
Hmm.
brain chemistry is starting to change, and it's like okay, I can go further. If I go past this, then I can reach a new milestone.
Right.
But sometimes that's where people start to see things, right?
Yeah.
You start to like, oh man, like I'm starting to see flashes of different things in my mind, you know,
Things trying
like
to distract you from your goal and keep you from getting there or
or to encourage you to go
Or to
further.
encourage you. Yeah,
It's you know, kind of a psychedelic moment.
right.
And
In the same
so
way that alcohol and cannabis can help you if
mhm, by
used properly, or
by altering your state of consciousness, right?
or stop you in your tracks and keep
Right.
you from reaching those goals. Yeah,
If you invest and
absolutely.
stay too much in that zone, yeah, like you'll get locked in, stop, probably get sick, have to go to sleep, rest it off, or
Right.
possibly worse ramifications. Hopefully not, but like
Whoa.
you know, I mean, and that's kind of where those points are. Like if you sit there and stay in your mind when you're running a marathon or a race of any kind, you stay stuck there, then you can't go further. Then
Well,
you're you end up quitting or getting stuck into that situation and falling behind. It's also known as, so to bring it back to your idea of the seed, the nine is also known as cyclical regularity, right? So it's that understanding that patterns seem to emerge in the vibration of reality, and that we can be aware that something similar to this point in time happened in the past, which is why it's
mm,
so similar to a seed, right? We've hit that point
right.
of, okay, we're history has done something similar to this in the past, and we can either repeat it or we can become something new. And that's
That's
so
that's
you have
what that's why there's significance too to 369, right? Like kind of, yeah, that those building blocks. Because once you hit three, it's like, okay, you've got a beginning, middle, and end. You've got one side, you've got the other side, and then you've got what it takes to get there. Or you've got this new normal. That's why stories everything happens in threes, and then six is a complete pattern too, because or it completes the pattern. Like six
hmm
is significant because it's two triangles. Now you have a pattern. You've done a beginning, middle, end, and you've done it again, and then so by the time you get to nine, uh, you're you're seeing a sequence, almost like what is more of a story, like how do you, or like a series,
hmm
because nine is the first. It's three squared. It's three times three. So
hmm
it's like, oh, this is still happening this way by this time. So three is a series. Uh, two is a pattern, right?
hmm
Like two sets of three is a pattern. Maybe like you know,
yeah, yeah,
it's really difficult for like any a binge-worthy show that you want to watch, for it to go two seasons and go, that was it, we did it. Like we're gonna
hmm
do more than one season, but then we did a second season, and then that's all we needed.
yeah.
But that can be very powerful, right?
hmm
Just the same as, um, but yeah, once you get to nine, it's like either this is gonna be a, seven season thing that we're doing here, and we're gonna keep going until it's broken, or we got something so potent that we're just going to be able to keep making it work,
hmm
year after year.
Yeah, and to think about it in terms of Mayan numerology, like you've got three being movement, right, and that's quite a potent state of being. It's germination, right? You've broken out of the shell at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got six, which is organic balance, right?
Right.
And this is the understanding of what it is like to grow as a sprout, right? So you've compounded, you've doubled that. And then hitting nine, like you're saying, is establishing that pattern, right? That this can go the exact same way, or we can move forward in a slightly similar way, but have a completely different outcome,
Hmm.
right? So instead of necessarily shooting out this little barb that'll eventually become a root, you're bursting open into this whole new reality of growth and beauty that'll eventually turn into something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I mean, that the flower. So we're at day 11 again. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. It's in a completely new medium too, because like when you're a bud, you're presumably you're in the air versus in the earth,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so it requires a different expression.
Yeah.
And flowers ostensibly are to attract pollinators in order to create the next stage that's coming after 11 to get us to 13, to get us to the fruiting body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would assume that like the pollination in theory happens in day 12. It's like you're an open flower now, and so because that's you've reached a flower by the time day 11,
Mm-hmm.
and then you're just looking to get you're expressing yourself, you beautiful little flower, you, and you're just looking to get pollinated so that you can become that new version,
Mm-hmm.
that you can develop that new fruit. Well, I
Yeah.
suppose like, because like that seems like that's also like a long period of time. Well, I guess each of these stages is a long period of time for the plant.
Mm-hmm.
None of this actually really happens in 2 weeks, or one 13-day stretch
Mm-hmm.
for any living thing, unless I don't know, some insects probably go through all of the stages very
Yeah.
quickly or faster than that. Yeah, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
all there's there's parts of life that go through the cycle on both sides, either much faster and with
Far
much more
slower.
frequent cycles and much longer cycles. Like an
Mm-hmm.
oak tree probably would take years and years to get to the next cycle.
Absolutely.
Human beings take a long time to get to each cycle. Like we're well known for having the longest uh, uh, what is it, adolescent phase, before we're mature adults and before we're treated as mature adults in the eyes of the law in most places. It's like, you got to be at least 18 and 21 and 25 before you can do some things,
Mm-hmm.
35 before you can run for political office or,
Right.
the president here in the United States. So it's like you have to reach certain levels of experience on the planet before we'll trust you with certain roles or certain uh, levels of maturity, assumed maturity, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
uh, for higher levels or further development of your potential.
Yeah. And I thought it
Wow.
was pretty cool that you brought up the fact that 12 was probably the point of pollination before you
Hmm.
hit that fruit, because at 12, like we've discussed this before, it's complex stability. It's also two
Oh.
points of organic balance coming together to create something new.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
The layers. I
Right.
love it. When the layers of understanding keep overlapping, right? It's like because when I described the 0 to 10 book, it's like, what am I going to do when I get the numbers keep going? So like you can get more meaning as the numbers continue to go up, but like it's just layers. It layers on top of itself. You're using what has already happened as you were counting up numbers, and that's where prime numbers probably are interesting because they don't have a lot of patterns that fit into them. Is essentially what that shows. Prime numbers are significant for that reason, that they don't have a lot of patterns that match what they've done. They're kind of unique. And only one and themselves go into, they can only be divided by. So,
Mm-hmm.
and how that become, like, doesn't it become less often? I'm assuming,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know mathematically, but I'm assuming that prime numbers become more rare the higher
Yeah.
the higher
So
you go. But that,
I
yeah,
think like the first five are like 1, 2, 3, 11, and 17. And
Yeah.
then it just becomes, like you said, more rare after that. So I
7.
mean,
Yeah.
oh right, yeah, you're right. One,
No worries.
one, two, three, 7, 11, 17,
And I'm also noticing that like
13, 17.
the
Excuse me.
number is exponential between them, right? So like 1 to 2 is 1, 2 to 3 is 1, 3 to 7 is now 3. We skipped a number, but 3 to 7 is 4. You know, like the
Mm-hmm.
difference between them, right? So like that's growing. Um, that's probably a formula in itself of like the difference between. Yeah, anyway, math. Geez, talk about Fibonacci circles and
Could
like the
be.
math numbers are crazy. Like I've never. I mean, I've been early on in my childhood. I was strong in math, but like as soon as I couldn't do things in my head anymore. But math is real.
Oh
Like it's
yeah.
so real. Like what else can you do? But that's why numbers I think are so potent. And it's so funny that in standard school curriculum, it's like so difficult to get kids interested in math. It feels like maybe it's because it's like a watered down version of what math is. I remember being in high school and stuff, and kids saying like, "When am I ever going to use this?" And like
Yeah.
it, like there's truth in that. There's truth in that. It's like, when are you ever going to use this? But it's also it's a framing issue. It's like um,
Right.
this is everywhere. This is happening all the time, all around you.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd be like a wackadoo teacher to talk about math that way. Man, Mr. Wells is crazy about math. Like, but those are the kind of teachers that you want, man. It's the crazy teachers that, yeah, they get talked about because they're cuckoo, but they're cuckoo, and that makes them fun. They make more more people are going to be interested because the people that are really passionate about it are the ones that are teaching it.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be able to see math everywhere. Not that you have to calculate the formula of what makes this microphone the microphone, or like, um, but I don't know, like it's the way that it's taught. Just
Mm-hmm.
like with language arts, like I'm obsessed with like you gotta. That's what I think Hamilton did to U.S. history, right? It's like the musical, the hip opera Hamilton made learning history like it just incorporated the right levels of entertainment, but also just narrative and storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
and made it so engaging. I mean, so much work Lin Manuel had to do to like put all that together,
Yeah.
but like the the probably without realizing it, like he's taught a lot about the founding fathers in that moment in time to an immeasurable number of young minds and old minds alike. Um, just little bits of information, even if, and I was recognizing this the other day too, even if you don't think you're learning, or you're like, you ask yourself this question when you're watching Hamilton, you're like, is that what really happened? And just that alone, right? That's enough to go like, did it really happen like that?
Mm-hmm.
You ask that about anything at any moment throughout there, that's your brain turning on to go, I'm actually curious about what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny you got back into that. It also brings up like true oral traditions. Like when you're telling the history of something, quite often you're not allowed to deviate from the precise telling of that
Cool.
story. Like you can add your own flair usually, and I think that's what Homer did when he was delivering the Odyssey, was adding his own flair. But his goal was to sit there and tell you about the War of Troy and the trials and tribulations of the warriors that had to come back home after that, and dealing with potentially their karma, you know,
Right.
because perhaps they just decimated an entire civilization, and in order to earn the right to come back home. They had to go through these immense trials, probably mostly internal, right? But who knows exactly how crazy the old world was, especially if
Mm.
human pattern is anything, like we've probably destroyed a lot of that,
Oh yeah,
because it was scary, it was a threat to us,
scary.
you know,
Hmm.
in some way. And so, like, yeah, or maybe in some ways it was beneficial to society and became addictive, like the dodo bird,
Right.
like was went through extinction because it was apparently a very delicious bird and it
I was gonna
was
say
easily
it
accessible.
probably tasted like chicken, you know. And before we
Yeah,
had factory farming and a means to set it up, it's like let's eat it, man. Let's eat that chicken.
yeah,
It looks delicious. It is delicious, and it's dumb,
right.
so it's easy to catch.
Yeah, exactly. And then apparently
uh,
there was like an herb or a flower in the Mediterranean that was used as a what is it? Prevention against pregnancy,
oh, sure.
right? So that got eaten to extinction. So
Whoa,
that plant doesn't exist anymore, but it's in the ancient
whoa.
texts of
We already had what's it called, birth control, but
right.
we ate it to extinction. You would think somebody would keep some of those seeds, man, for that flower. Ugh,
Yeah,
but
but
but but
if it's
no, when you're unconsciously just going like, yeah, let's keep eating this because I don't want kids. You're gonna keep eating it. But I also like that that gets us back to flour because and like we were talking about nipping the bud, what stops at a bud, what stops at a flower, in the sense of like if there's a flower that keeps people from reproducing, right? Keeps people from reaching the fruiting stage.
mm-hmm.
That's pretty intense as well. There's got to be other. I mean, flowers are known all over to have different medicinal properties, have dramatic effects. The flowering body of just as much as the fruit, and some plants, of course, it's the stem or the leaves, or
Mm-hmm.
some plants it's the root. But nothing is more spectacular in form or fashion than a flower to kind of present or kind of like signal to you, like, hey, like look at me. I could be tasty. I could poison you.
Mm-hmm.
And so nothing. I would presume nothing is more recognizable than flowers uh, in terms of in order to kind of like organize it. Like if you're a proto-human who's kind of going through the forest and like you start seeing some flowers, it's like, oh, okay, I know what that is based on the flower. The flower probably has the most complex um, signifiers for what it is. I mean, there's all. I mean, if you're really looking closely and you're totally conscious and you're like into plants and all that kind of stuff, you can probably look at leaves and see that kind of thing. You
Mm-hmm.
can probably just look at a plant and you just know. Uh, Most people today would probably look at the leaves of most plants and go like, that just looks like a leaf, you know. But
Mm-hmm.
when you can really like, you can tell the differences between plant. Oh man, that would be that's some kind of superpower that I'd like to have that I don't know that I'll ever attain, but that'd be cool. Is to just be able to kind of like see a plant, know what it is. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. I'm not enough of a druid, but
Take some botany classes or
yeah,
read some
yeah,
botany
I
books.
will. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's kind of backtracking a little bit, but when we were talking about words and oral traditions and stuff like that, one of my
Yeah,
favorite stories that I learned about in one of my classes at university when I was studying performance and art was the Epic of Sundiata, which actually I didn't realize until this last year has its own festival every year at the Seattle Center.
Ooh.
The
Whoa.
Festival of Sundiata, which is who was the king of Mali and has the most epic story of rising to power, his creation, the things that he could do, just wild. And today we probably attribute most of it to just fanciful thinking. But if you really look at our species as a whole and what we have supposedly been able to develop through rigorous training and diligent practice, like this, and a lot of knowledge, like it's very possible that this stuff happened, you know.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that the people who tell it are known as the Jele. They're the knowledge keepers. They were also the warrior monks who were tasked with keeping the king protected and teaching the king. Like they're basically the equivalent of a dictionary. Like they're the
Whoa.
equivalent of asking Google in the old world style. Like you go
Right.
instead of going to your computer and asking, or going say to an encyclopedia of yesteryear, like you would go to this guy or gal, and they're just so knowledgeable about words, about experiences, about history, that they would just be like, yeah, so that word means this, and this is how you use it, and da 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 da, and it's just God, it's so profound. Just I recommend reading it if you ever get the chance.
Totally.
It's
What what's the name of the what's that again? The
it's the Epic of Sundiata. It's Sundiata.
It'll get me close enough.
Here,
Because I'll ask the JLA. I mean, excuse me, Google.
I've got the book here. Let me just grab it real
Oh,
quick.
yeah. Oh, yeah. You got to throw up a book.
Yep.
It's been a
Wait,
while since you've thrown up a book into the view of the camera.
oh yeah, yeah. 2 seconds.
What else? JLA, Sundiata.
Okay, so I misquoted the title ever so slightly. It's Sundiata, the Epic of Old Mali.
Oh, Molly. Ah, I see. Okay.
It's fascinating. It's just so fascinating. There's prophecy. There's human to animal transformations. There's magic. There's war. And there's overcoming diversity. It's just it's a perfect story, but it's history. It,
Yeah.
it's a wild ride. It's really good.
So, in terms of placing it historically, like when did this epic occur? Kind of like the epic of Odysseus, by Homer, is placed at what, like 1,000 or 2,000 BC, or maybe 3,000. I don't know.
Yeah. So this says it's been an oral tradition handed down from the 13th century, so the 1200s.
Oh, okay, cool. So a little bit closer to home then, too.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, it's it's funny because it says on here should rank alongside the Iliad and Odyssey as one of the world's greatest adventure stories, and it's still told today. Like they these people in Mali still share this tradition of telling this story. And like I said, like they hand this down and it has to be told in a very particular way. The
Right.
words have to be the words. Like you don't deviate.
Whoa. That's intense. Because again, that's so intense because, well, I mean, what else are you gonna do? I just mean like words. I mean, unless you're doing an immaculate job of retelling the story, and it is the cornerstone of the culture itself, which you know happens. But everything is transitory. These stories, even themselves, like when retold in context, carry new meaning every time, and depending on who's hearing them and what's going on in their world at that time. So it's impossible to carry on that meaning forever, right? Through time. Oh, I don't know. I say impossible, but nothing's impossible. You know that like yes, retelling the story with the exact words. Something else tells me though that like even without the retelling of the story, that the knowledge of the Jele would be preserved, right? That even if they stopped telling the story, that it would come through in another story. It would come through in the Iliad. It would come through in all the stories that we have of the great archetypes and the great heroes. Um, each of them has similarities, and just like a lot of the ancient cultures also had some story behind. Not, I don't know if it was necessarily Orion's belt or the Seven Sisters. Like there's specific constellations that all carry similar stories, even from disparate parts of the world. And the only way that we can assume that that is were we talking about this last week too? Like some sort of collective consciousness thing. You know, that is there's stories that exist through us, regardless of the language, which is, you know, corrupted. I don't want a negative word necessarily, but it's just corrupted by context. It's the best tool that we have to describe things that can't be described by language. They need to be experienced. So we're all living these stories, whether consciously or subconsciously, regardless of them being passed down. I think what happened, like why it's important for the oral tradition to be so exact, is because you want to keep it as close to home as possible. You want to keep it in the family. You want to preserve the powers or the insights or the knowledge that came from those experiences for as long as you possibly can. But maybe that's what I'm getting at, is that that's a fear-based strategy.
That it could
No,
be
no, not
lost.
necessarily. Sorry, that's me projecting. That's me projecting. Uh, but, but yeah, like, but also like that's why like knowledges like that are also protected. Like right, like it's like you don't share this with people outside the tribe, and then maybe that's where the danger comes from. Maybe that's where the fear is coming from. It's like, or and I'm just kind of going all over the place here, but maybe that's the perception from people outside of Mali, for example, people who don't feel attached to Greek history. You know, they hear the Iliad and they hear like that's sci-fi, that's just a story, man. You know, in our culture or in the modern day, it's like that's Santa Claus. You know, that's make believe. Um, and so, but do you still celebrate? Do you still have the spirit of Christmas, and do you still have the spirit of Santa Claus in you around that time? Like, do you still take the meaning? Do you still respect what's trying to be told? You know, that story that's trying to be told. What's the moral behind it? And if you embody it, then you believe. You believe in Santa Claus. I mean, you believe in the magic behind the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because it's interesting too. to get it back to the oral tradition, is like the what is the storyteller's flair then, right? Like if you're using the exact words, what is storyteller flair? Like and how what makes a great storyteller then? Like because I can read, I can read the epic, I can read the Iliad and do it monotone, and it's like, oh great, like Brian's reading Brian's reading it again. Like, can we get somebody else to read it? But yeah, like where you put emphasis and flair, that's maybe where it matters. Context, what's going on in the world. You know what parts of the story to really inflect on, because an epic covers so much of what has already been experienced by every culture universally. So there are parts of the story where you're like, oh, I know I got everybody's attention now, so you can have a little bit more fun with it.
Yeah, and there's actually an interesting tradition amongst the Jelly, from what I understand, that each generation, each storyteller adds their own little something, their own little piece of flair to that storytelling. And that gets carried on through the generations. So, like, somebody 3 generations ago who added this little bit of, here at this point of the story, we're going to ramp it up a little bit with our telling. We're going to tell it a little faster. It's like, ooh, everybody liked that, so we're going to keep that.
Right.
So that continues on every single generation. So now it's just become this it's like this sung tale that's just
Right.
so beautiful that it's just like, they're telling a story? Oh my god!
Right.
I'm just enraptured in how they're telling it. I'm not even realizing that I'm intaking information while they're doing it.
Yeah. Ooh. What that I believe is probably. I mean, it's the oldest art, and it has yet to be. I mean, it's been perfect by every storyteller who were standing on the shoulders of giants, just like with everything. But like, yeah, like how would we be able to tell the stories that we do today? How would we be able to do CGI if it wasn't, and create these elements that we can visually see, because the old storytellers were using their imagination, right? Like and they were telling the story in a way that projected into your imagination. So they were able to kind of tell the story in a way where you're seeing the war happen, even though it's just one person telling it. You're seeing all the magic and in your mind. So they're telling it in a way that infects you with the like, oh, I need to know what happens next season on the Epic of Senyata.
Right.
But yeah, that's the ancient Netflix binging, is basically just you sit down for the whole epic. I wonder how long it would take to tell the whole epic of the Iliad and the Odyssey. Like you'd have to have a festival. You'd have to be like, this is going to be 3 days of this, and we're going to have food and we're going to party and I'm going to need lots of water breaks.
Yeah, I wonder how much wine. I wonder how much wine Homer was drinking during the process of this.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was the only real safe way to imbibe water at that time, because you couldn't trust your local swimming hole or creek because of the bacteria and whatnot. So this fermented juice is like getting you lit, so it's making your storytelling a little bit more fanciful and exaggerated, but like, I mean, he's been doing it for a while, so he's really good at it. He's harnessed it.
Right. But that's also why it's called spirit, too. And that's probably where some of the flair comes from, the inspiration, as we were talking about, day 9, and kind of like that. All right, we're two-thirds of the way through the story now, and I've been drinking. I got to keep track of where I am, what's left to tell, and But by then, I don't know. By then, also like you have everybody hooked, so like you can also probably be afforded a lot more graces for the final stretch. Uh, and then also, I suppose, to an extent too, because when we have oral traditions, it's not always. I mean, that's why I love improv too. It's like it's a collaborative art, right? So like if people can see, oh, Homer's a little sloshed, like I don't know if he's going to make it to the end. You know, people can kind of chime in. They've heard the story before. You know, last year's festival, and it's their most favorite part. So they start chiming in, or they act the part, and that's how we started. You know, theaters is like it wasn't just the one storyteller, the one sage or the one mystic in the tribe that kept telling the story. It's like, yeah, every now and then, like he couldn't, you know, he showed up to work and he just kind of didn't have it that day. But everybody else who had felt it from before could carry it on through or help out and support it. And then you have the other people who are attuned and know the story. You know, the sub storytellers; those become the actors. You know, and then leaving room for the original storyteller or author to or whoever got the story passed down to them to become more the director. It's like, yeah, I want to take a little backseat here. This goes there, that goes there. When you tell the story, do it this way. This really seems to be the vibe. Oh
Yeah.
man, and that's how that evolves. That's how our storytelling has evolved. Because then we had theater, and then after theater, and our technology evolves, and we have, you were talking about light production and stuff. You use different tools in the theater. And then ultimately you have movies, and look at what we've done with our technology on the silver screen.
Yeah, and then just as an addition to the point that you're making, and to bring it back to the day, like not
Yes,
only do you have those people who are the quiet observers, right? Which is what a lot of what the day is about. The dog is not just the loyalty, which they do. They're obviously loyal if they're coming back to see this tale again and again that they've been
right,
inspired by, and they want to help perfect it too. Like it's like, okay, yeah, you've got this thing right, but you're a little under the weather today, or you've had a
right,
little bit too much sun, so we're gonna help you out with it. But we do understand this hierarchy, right? You're the top
and
dog here, boss. So you've got to tell
right.
us what we can do and what we can't do. But we're
Mm,
going to try to add as much flair and character to these things as we possibly can. You know, and then like you
oh,
said,
totally.
it that those troops, those groups, those families, those packs become, you know, theater troops, become cinemas, become uh, um, companies that develop shows year after year, day after day, you know, so that we can still experience this ancient tradition of storytelling.
Yes, I'm glad that you brought it back to the dog too, because I feel like we have definitely hammered on the day being 11,
Hmm.
and bounced around the day as well. Um, kind of talking about a lot of the other days. But yeah, is there anything that we kind of haven't covered in terms of what can be pulled out of our understanding of the dog of the Oc?
Did we talk about this off
You know?
camera? The Speaking of oral tradition, the fact that the uh, dog, the sound "ok," comes from the sound that the animal makes, and that's how the Mayans' language is developed. Is the
I
sounds of
think
the
we might have
universe?
I think we might have started with that because we were talking
Yeah.
about the cat sound as well.
Hmm.
But yes, yes, and that's how we got talking about language arts and everything else too. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we did start heavy dog, uh,
Yeah.
to be sure. I'm pretty sure we included that. But yeah, that awk does sound like dog.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of try and blend the two together then,
Okay.
because that's the important part of the day, right? Of the understanding is that we have this understanding of the dog, right, and it's modified by the number of the day, right? So
Hmm.
we have to see that and theater's a great example of this, is like that there seems to be this chaos happening, you know, but it's so well organized and patterned that these people have to trust each other implicitly to make this thing go off so that it can happen in the most beautiful fashion possible,
Hmm.
right? So that it can become something else. So, like, you have to have a director,
Got
right?
it.
You have to have a stage manager who's making You have to have somebody building the structures, right? You have to have
I
the
love
state
it.
the
So,
various
so
actors, the leads, the
I'm gonna try my best to compile everything, right? So we got the dog, we got 11, the flowering day, and in this analogy that we have concocted here of storytelling through theater. So like the storytelling, uh, you have this company that's telling this story, and it's a big production, and this production is being presented to either the town or multiple towns. Maybe it's a touring company, because they're so famous for putting this story together so well. And within this production company, you have this hierarchy of people who play certain roles, but they support each other, and they all know the story well enough where they can stand in for each other,
mm,
given that kind of loyalty of the dog, the quiet observer of the dog as well, and recognizing, but also the quiet observer of the audience
mm-hmm,
and the people who are taking in the story to kind of understand it and maybe potentially be inspired by it, giving the tone of 11, the flower which inspires what comes next. Maybe some of these people in the audience are so inspired by the story as it's being told that they want to become a part of the company themselves. Maybe they want to start their own production because they think, oh, if they just added this element, but they can't because they don't have that element here in my town or they, where they come from, and they start their own thing, becoming the fruiting body, becoming inspired by the way the story was told. Uh, so yeah, I think in that sense, like the whole orchestration of it is like maybe that kind of like embodies the 11, the flowering dog, the flowering dog. I like that too, like the tone, putting the tone instead of a number, because a number can be abstract.
mm-hmm,
I think I love the layer of of putting a plant there,
mm-hmm,
because just like the symbols of the Nawal have a character, that gives you so much more information than a number. A number kind of forces you to dive into what that number could mean, like,
mm-hmm,
and put your own interpretations to it. A character gives a lot of that to you. So a plant provides the character. The character of the plant being a flower provides a lot of that for you. You get a lot of information from what is a flower versus what is 11.
mm-hmm.
It's an easier way to kind of map on that stuff. I absolutely love that. Uh, so I hope we continue to talk about days. I mean, we are going to. We're going to talk about days in terms of like where we are in the process of the growing plant, whatever the plant might be.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and because it was also making me think of like with the Chinese zodiac, it's like I thought I was a dragon, but it turns out I'm actually just a fire rabbit. Um,
Ah,
because my birthday is in February and it lies right before the Chinese New Year actually starts. I
right.
grew up thinking, oh, I was born in the year of the dragon. I'm a dragon.
Mm.
How cool is that? But it actually turns out, no, I'm not a dragon. I'm a rabbit, but I'm a fire rabbit. So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a dragon in a bunny body. So that's something neat. But that element too, like where you have those two elements, just like the tones seem to influence. Um, I like thinking of it like a flowering dog. If it was on day 9, it'd be the budding dog, you know,
Right.
or the the growing dog. I don't know, like, right, if it was day 7, right, like
Right. It's prolific.
internal growth,
It's prolific growth,
prolific growth.
but you can. I was gonna say that even
Yeah.
though we are giving it a little bit more character by showing you where in the growth cycle of a plant or a tree that it is, it also has huge amounts of layers for their own meanings that we didn't necessarily touch on, like
Oh, okay.
liberation, dissolvement, disclosure, right? Which is a
Just
great
for 11? Are
for
these for
11,
11
just
or?
for 11,
Yeah, yeah.
just for the flowering stage,
Liberation, yeah.
right? So, which is actually a great example to put it into with acting and storytelling, because of how inspiring it could be. It could be very liberating
Hmm.
to learn these things, and not only that, I was thinking that the Trecena, the week that we're in, is that of the light, right? And what do you
Mm,
usually do right before a show? You cut out the lights, and boom,
mm,
here comes the spotlight. Here comes the house lights
hmm.
to illuminate the stage so that we could tell this story.
This is where our focus should be. Yeah.
Exactly. So going back to the number 7, even though it's prolific growth in terms of the stage in the tree, it's also known as magic, right? So you could think of
7.
it
Yeah.
as if it was like 7 dog, it'd be the magic of loyalty, the magic of perfection, right? You gotta
Mm.
go.
The magic dog? No, no, that's not. That's a scam likely call.
Oh,
Uh,
fun, fun.
who doesn't love getting those?
Yeah, yeah. I know that guy,
Ooh, the magic dog. I mean, who wouldn't want to be that?
right?
Um, it feels like, but then at the same time, I don't know how exactly. Yeah. So the map doesn't work perfectly, right? Because if you're on any of the even days, uh, I'm sure we could map on, but there isn't like a clear stage of growth for
Hmm.
our plant map for those in between days, those even days.
Though I think
Yet,
you very intuitively did do that for 12. Like, we're
hmm,
calling this the day of the flower, right? 12 is very likely the day of pollination,
right,
right?
the pollinated dog. I don't know. It just kind of gets funny, you know, like when you do try and put them together, like
Mm,
you can. Like I can conceive of like a wood rabbit, a fire rabbit, an earth rabbit, right? They're very elemental,
mm,
uh, but you're basically trying to hybridize two species by putting a plant process into a living. Well, I mean the different characters aren't all animals either, you know, because like
true.
we're talking about being in the light, the week of the light, you know, and I'm a storm and you're a road,
Hmm.
uh, you know, but yeah, the pollinated road, you know, like it's fine, right? Like it's just helpful to even if it feels silly to say, right? It's still it paints a picture, which
Hmm.
is and again, if it, even if it, especially if it's silly, even if it's, especially if it feels weird, ooh, a magic dog, like yes, like that makes it so much more fun to try and understand or interpret what it means to say that. Um, yeah, so absolutely, like I can't wait to see how that continues to develop as well.
Yeah,
And we're
same
gonna
here.
have a whole bunch of pollinated storms and but also like to figure out what the even days would be as well,
Right,
because yeah, absolutely. There's stages between the stages that represent things. So that'll be a fun thing to kind of continue to incorporate as we land on different days and tones or repeat tones
right.
and repeat symbols of days. Because
Yeah,
if
yeah.
we keep doing this, I mean, we're bound to do it. I was just thinking about how the last Gosh, something about the last dog. Oh, they were both born in the week of dog,
Hmm.
right? Um, but you know, we weren't born in the same week of dog, so
Right.
that means that we were born one Sulkin year
A full cycle, yeah.
apart. yeah, one cycle apart from each other,
Hmm.
which is wild.
Yeah.
Which is one pregnancy. Basically, when I was born, you were being conceived.
Basically, yeah. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You
which is
you
cute.
you and my buddy Cody. Yeah,
Okay,
you guys are like days apart.
they're similar.
Yeah.
Similar days. Okay,
Yeah,
right
yeah.
on. Yeah.
Like I think you guys are like, I don't know. You're born within the same month, like literally same month, same year, like just days apart. So,
Have you mentioned before how there parallels in our personality or just ways of being, or or do the days work differently enough where it's like if we're in the same week, if we were born in the same week, yeah, like how different can personalities be? Because like if we're trying to map this over to like the Greek zodiac or whatever, it all has to be it's all based on how closely timed you were to other things. And my understanding of the Tzolk'in is that it's less to do with that, and it's more to do with the the cycles of nature here as it is on Earth, not so much the cosmic.
so the Tzolk'in is very cosmic. It's where we get the energy from is from the center of the galaxy. But yeah, I think the best way to look at it is that the Tzolk'in gives you the best internal engine, right? It's the kind of engine that you receive in your life, whereas the season that you were born in has the most impact on your physicality, the shell that the engine is
Mm.
residing in. So,
The shell of the car, the body of it.
right,
Yeah, how it
exactly.
presents, because it's also talked about as a being your persona, your personality,
Hmm.
where you're talking about the internal, uh, and you can get into that when you get deeper into the Greek zodiac and you find out what the other alignments are. But your sun sign is basically how you present,
Right.
or yeah, your
Your
personality, how you show yourself to the world.
yeah, your rising sign is more how your physicality displays, how you fit into the world in a physical manner. Your emotional body is dictated more by your moon sign, and so on and so forth. But
Gotcha.
the energies that you utilize, that you really truly are mostly based off of the Tzolk'in cycle. So,
Gotcha. The Tolkien cycle too. The Tolkien cycle too. Then is only trying to kind of give you a picture of the internal. It's not necessarily anything personality wise. I mean, they kind of mix, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
As within, so without. So in that sense, like you
Yeah.
know,
So I mean, there is a blending, right? Like we mentioned before when we were talking about the stamp that the stars and planets put on you. So like you've got this magnetism happening, and you're going to get pulled in certain directions. It's going to oscillate in the way that it changes based off of the movement. But that base function, that base energy, is always going to be present.
cool.
So I've also kind of noticed how certain people will look very similar to, and maybe it's just because I'm used to seeing this. The similar energies will look like similar energies, like the same.
Mm.
Like I dated a girl in high school who was the exact same energy day as me, but we were born a cycle apart, right? But at a glance, we looked very similar. Like if we were both facing opposite directions, like we looked incredibly similar, like almost like we could have been related. Like, but
Yeah.
clearly we weren't. But like
I mean,
we were just
sometimes you
very,
see that in couples.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean,
So
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes
No,
you
no,
see that
no.
in couples, right? You're like, you guys look a little close. Could
Right.
be, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it could very well be that they've grown together to look that
Right.
way, right?
Mm.
But the the energy, like, is just, it was so strong. Like, it was like the most lovey-dovey kind of energy, a relationship I've ever had. The closest to that sort of relationship I had was with somebody who was 10 stages of growth ahead of me. Like, we had like a very, very close connection. They were 13 road. And like, that relationship didn't end up happening very well. And I've told you about this off camera a few times. I
Gotcha.
wrote a play about it because it was so impactful on my life. But like, there, you do develop this closeness, and there's even it develops with the people that are in different ways, but kind of, disseminating in order, is those who are closest to you in sign. Like, so, like, some of my really close friends, close relationships that I've had, are like the signs that are before and after me. Like, my buddy Cody, like, he was born in the week of the dog, but he was born technically the day after me. And, like, we were just tight, but, like, our symbol colors are very different. So, like, sometimes, like, I really don't agree with the things that he says. And
Right.
that's very much in the energy. Same with my cousin. He's not even my blood cousin, by marriage, but, like, we are super close to each other, and, like, we were best buds growing up. And I mean, I haven't seen him for a long time because our lives are very different. Like, we live in different states. But, like, I know that I can just come into his situation, he can come into mine. We'll still just be fucking
Right on.
cool, you know.
Right on that level.
Whereas, like, if you go with your opposing sign, opposing cardinal direction, rather. So, like, you're a blue sign symbol, right? You go to your opposing symbols, red, you're going to learn a lot from those sort of people. Like, a lot. Like, they're going to constantly be teaching you lessons. They will show up, and you will have experiences with them. And it's like, oh, okay, I need to deal with that. Or, oh, okay, man, that made me upset, but I can see now why that happened, and I can
How do
adjust
I
my.
know? Yeah, how do I know what those which Nawals those are?
So, for, I mean, it's like, you can look
Are
on
they
different. They're very clearly colored. I think Mayan Cross does a really good job of showing
right?
you the color. But it's like, they also say direction, right? So it's north, south, east, and west. So
Gotcha.
if you're east, west people are going to teach you a lot. You know.
Man, I can't wait till we get a little because man, there's a lot of different dynamics with the Tzolk'in, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
like um, to help you interpret, to kind of orient yourself, right? If we're looking at a map of the Tzolk'in, right, you've got 20 Nawal, you've got 13 days, and you've shown me that like little, rotary thing where you
Yeah.
can kind of rotate. But then on top of that, then you also have the direction, the cardinal direction that they represent, which also uh, represents a certain color on the color spectrum, either white to gold or blue to red,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Correct.
And so, um, yeah, I mean, I feel like there's got to be a way to neatly kind of map all of that. Like it feels like it would be like some sort of gyroscope. You know what I mean? It's like here, like orient your the day tone, and then orient what? Oh man, that'd be a cool little trinket. Is
Yeah.
to have like a little Zulkin Nawal, uh, like a calendar, basic, like literally a calendar where you get like every day instead of like tearing off the day and seeing a little funny quote or something, like you just you shift your little gyroscope, and it tells you what color the day is. It tells you what New tone it is. Oh
Yeah.
man, I
So
want to see one of those.
some of the most this is just another book that I have, The Mayan Factor, Path Beyond Technology by Jose Arguelles. Just kind of, they usually put it in like a grid,
Oh, okay,
right? So
cool.
these moments are, I think, cross points between um, uh, major events that happen. So I mean, like, there's so many.
I definitely need to check out a couple of books from the Chris Jones library. You know,
Yeah, you're more than welcome to check them out, dude.
got to
Scan
make it
whatever you
over there.
like and record. This one is like one of the more, like, I think, complete esoteric ways to look at this. It's very much world tree,
Oh yeah.
which, I mean, if these guys are creating a world tree depiction using their understanding of the energies that come from the center of the galaxy in a very particular manner, pattern, then there's probably something to the whole world tree idea
I mean,
as a
it's come
fundamental.
up. It's come up in multiple ancient civilizations. The whole tree, because isn't the Kabbalah too like kind of like a tree and the tree of life? That's all.
Hmm.
It's all the same. It's kind of like just like the constellations. It's like these are the representations that we use that go across cultures. I those should be the things that we're focusing on, the things that bind us, the things that um, help us see the commonality in each other, and then we can celebrate the differences
Yeah.
because we can celebrate the diversity of expression in all the different flowers that are born of this tree, you know, and all the different fruits that are born of this tree. But it requires that we first all see that we're part of the same tree, or that we all use a tree to kind of represent ourselves. Um, and I don't know. There's something curious there too that I mean, I know I've mentioned before. I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast, but like my whole affinity for drawing trees from an early age, there was some ease that came with drawing trees, in that they like if you want to learn to draw, like maybe start with trees because they are so forgiving, right? Like trees can come in so many different shapes and sizes, and you've seen trees in your life. I mean, hopefully at some point or another.
Yeah.
So you have a mental map already of what to do um, in order to make it happen. But
Yeah.
yeah,
You just have to let it flow. A really cool thing that the Mayan used to constantly recognize that we're all the same thing, and we just have
yeah.
slight little differences between us, was their greeting, which is two part. I only mostly remember the first half, which is Inlak Esh, which is I am another you, right? And that was their greeting to anybody that came along. It was like Inlak Ish. It's a constant reminder that we are spirit in a meat body, and we're all
I
just,
love that.
a meat
I,
machine.
that
And
You know, that's just crazy. I'm so glad that this came up too, because just yesterday I was chatting with a coworker about like greetings, like literally greetings, and one of our other coworkers, like we've recognized that his everyday greeting is like, "Oh, how's it going?
yeah,
Best ever," is his response. Best ever, and we were kind of contemplating that a little bit because it's like what does that mean really? Like this is the best day ever? No, it's just like each day stacks on itself. I get another opportunity. That's what I kind of theorize. It's like, you know, but then it begs the question, kind of like we were talking about, like learning, it kind of begs the question, like, really, best ever? Like, it gets you to ask a question. You, the one who asked, like, how are you doing? You say best ever. It makes that person go, I want to know more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the same way that now you're telling me, like, another you is like, because I was trying to figure out, like, what do I want my greeting to be? Like, because, like, best ever has this thing of, like, it's not, oh, I'm good. It's not the boilerplate that we hear from everybody all the time. It's unique to that person, to that individual, or at least, it has that flair.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh yeah, what would mine be? So that I could kind of separate myself, or like feel like myself when I'm answering it. That's true to me. That's true every day. That isn't just good, but that tells you a little bit about. But I like that. I want to try and rework that, like another you, uh, into like as a response, because it's going to make people go like, what? It's going to make people go, like, what do you mean? Another you, like, hey, how you doing? Another you. Already just that alone is enough confusion to probably beg people to go like, huh?
Uh-huh.
And want to know more.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, I'm just another you, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it too much already. And so, yeah, that kind of solidifies it. Because I think all I came up was, like, happy to be here. And I was like, that's nice. It's just like, I'm happy to be here, and then also kind of like the be here now kind of feeling of like, I'm present, I'm happy to just, show up here, but it's also just kind of like, it's kind of meh. It's kind of like a meh representation. Another you is like, it's that the benevolent trickster energy that I love so much, because it's like, it's nowhere near the response anyone's expecting. And it forces them to double down on, like, do you really want to know? I love it. Oh, I'm going to use that. I'm going to steal that, Mayans. Gosh, I knew you guys had some cool shit going on.
Yeah. It always reminds me every time I say it. I get that idea of, hey, what's up, brother? Hey, how you doing, cousin? And then I just get this immediate image of that movie, The Rescuers. You ever see that?
Oh, yeah, like the Rescuers. I remember the Rescuers Down Under. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Pea soup.
Yeah, yeah. So the first one was actually
Yeah.
that movie saved Disney from going bankrupt. Little known fact.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Distributed by Buena Vista. Let me just rattle off everything about it. But there's a point where Bernard and Bianca like basically crash land into the swamp where Penny, the little orphan girl, is being held, and they're taken in by the local, animals. Um, I think they're possums or swamp rats or something like that, and like their hit country is all get out, and these people are these mice are from New York, so they don't have any kind of natural surviving instincts out in the woods. So they're like half drowned, coming out of the water, exhausted, and the possum character, the country possum, he's like, "Here, cousin, looks like you could use a swig of this," and just puts a jug to his mouth, which is clearly alcohol, probably moonshine, and he just like gets a huge swig of it. It cures what ails you, and gives him a slap on the back where he's like, "Oh my god, yeah," and just kind of showing how unaccustomed to harsh life they are, because they're city folk.
Right. Yep.
But that whole idea is like, these are clearly two different animals, but this guy just accepted them like family. He's like, "Here you go, cousin. Have a
Yep.
little bit of what I'm having. It's good stuff. Get you on
Oh,
your way."
yes.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes me think of just like that idea, the juxtaposition too of like the perception of the South, as being bumpkins, but also like Southern comfort and also Southern hospitality are also synonymous with there. It's like um, getting back to kind of where we kicked off too with the paradox. I mean, I love paradox, but like where both exist there, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like they'll say bless you, but mean, like, oh, you poor soul,
Right, yeah.
like,
Bless your heart, you poor
oh,
ignorant
bless your
son.
heart. Like, it sounds well-meaning, but at the same time, they're just like, they're kind of concerned about you.
Right, yeah.
Um,
Or they just write you
uh,
off like a total imbecile.
that still contains that same um, connection. Like,
Mm,
oh, I feel for you. I feel what you're going through, or I can imagine what that's like, putting myself in your shoes kind of vibes.
mm,
Even if it comes across as kind of like aggressive, like that possum just shoving alcohol. I didn't like. Who knows if I drink or like that I'm, right? Like you're just forcing your world on me.
mm,
But um, that's what it takes to have that recognition of the self, regardless of its shape, form, or distance or separation between you. Oh man,
yeah.
good stuff. Good
Good.
stuff. We're really
I,
wrapping it up with,
yeah.
with some power tonight.
I think that's a good place to leave it, man. Like,
Hell yeah, buddy.
all right.
Well, another you to you.
Yeah, another you to you, brother.
All right, to the next one.
All right, for sure.